I never imagined my future would vanish in the time it takes to say yes to a wedding invitation. While I was standing beside my best friend in her white dress, tossing petals and giving speeches about love and trust, someone back home was taking a wrench to my world. Not out of malice, worse, out of entitlement disguised as love. My name is Natalie Greer. I'm 24 years old, and the machine I built with my bare hands, the one I saved for piece by piece over 3 long years, was gone when I came home. My workstation, my dream PC, my portal to a future in software design. Sold for a shopping spree for my little sister's new opportunity. What they sold wasn't just hardware. It was the hours I worked tutoring on weekends, the birthdays I skipped, the dresses I didn't buy, the ramen I ate for weeks so I could afford a better graphics card. They didn't just sell a computer, they sold my blueprint, the one I was building to escape everything they thought I should become. And they didn't even ask. It started when I was 8. My uncle gave me an old beige desktop. Most kids would have played games on it. I opened it with a screwdriver and fell in love with the noise of the fans, the copper warmth of the motherboard, the way the machine breathed when you brought it to life. While my sister Claire was out growing into glitter tutus and dance trophies, I was in my room learning Python, building circuits out of wires and hope. They told me I was different and tense, a little too serious for a girl. But I didn't care. I had something that felt real. By 16, I had a savings jar labeled Blueprint PC, a dream machine I would one day build not just to run code, but to stand for everything I'd earned on my own terms. I wasn't just building a computer. I was building proof that I mattered, that effort meant something, that talent wasn't disposable even if it came in the wrong package for their expectations. I never asked them for help. Not when I was tutoring 3 nights a week or working the tech counter at the electronics store. Not when I was rejected from internships for not fitting the vibe. Not even when I ate peanut butter for a week to afford a processor that could handle rendering. They never asked how I was doing, they assumed I was fine. Because I didn't need new shoes. Because I didn't cry when things were unfair. Because I didn't ask for anything. Claire always asked, and Claire always got. So when I walked into my room after that wedding weekend and saw my desk stripped bare, no tower, no dual screens, no glowing pulse of the water-cooled heart I'd built, it didn't feel real. Like someone had erased a part of my soul and replaced it with silence. I thought maybe it was a prank or a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. It was a decision, a family decision. She needed that program in New York, my mom said. It's only for 10 weeks. It could change her life. I stared at her, and I realized something I'd known for years but never said aloud. In this house, Claire's future was always worth more than mine. This isn't a story about a computer. This is a story about finally walking away from the people who told me my boundaries were optional, about building something no one could take from me, again starting with myself. If you've ever been told you're overreacting, that your pain is just a phase, that your work doesn't count because it doesn't fit their mold, stay with me. Because the story isn't just mine. It might be yours too. Let's begin. Taylor's wedding had been marked on my calendar for nearly a year. She was one of the few friends who'd stood by me through college coding boot camps, job rejections, and caffeine-fueled deadlines. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I didn't hesitate. I'd already cleared the weekend even though it landed dangerously close to the final handoff date for a freelance UI project that could open real doors for me. I wasn't worried. My project was nearly complete. All I needed were 2 solid days to polish the assets, test the interfaces, and run rendering batches on my custom rig, the one machine I trusted. I packed my bridesmaid dress heels I'd wear once, and almost on instinct my external hard drive with every backup I had, just in case. I remember hesitating before zipping up my suitcase, looking back at my desk and whispering, "Don't let anyone touch this." I even texted my mom. She replied, "Relax, no one wants your computer." It's strange how the biggest moments of impact often happen when you're not looking. The wedding itself was beautiful, heartfelt vows, embarrassing dance floor moves, a brief escape from the tightrope I walked at home. But Sunday morning brought with it a wave of unease I couldn't shake. I checked my phone compulsively, missed calls, vague texts from Claire, no explanations. By the time I landed back home, I was in full-on autopilot mode, replaying instructions in my mind. File paths, deadlines, my clients' expectations. I'd even taken a cab instead of waiting for a ride just to buy myself more time with my machine. And then I opened my bedroom door. What I saw wasn't just a room that had been altered, it was a betrayal made visible. My dual monitors were gone. Cables trailed from behind the desk like veins cut mid-surgery. The tempered glass case, that gorgeous shell that once pulsed with light and life, had vanished. I stood still for a moment as if not moving might reverse time, as if blinking might bring it back. My mom appeared at the doorway a minute later, holding a laundry basket and a carefully composed look. Claire got into that New York fashion program, she said. Like that explained everything. We had to act fast. Your father sold the setup to Craig's son, the one from his golf league. We didn't get much for it, but every bit helped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I think I just stood there watching her lips move, wondering how many times I had ignored the small warnings, the shrugged off birthdays, the canceled celebrations, the money borrowed without mention. This wasn't an isolated choice, it was a pattern reaching its peak. In that moment, I learned something they never taught me growing up. The deepest hurt doesn't come from strangers. It comes from people who say they love you while excusing the pain they cause. And that realization didn't break me. It woke me up. The only thing louder than my heartbeat that night was the silence between us. My room, once filled with quiet ambition and soft machine hums, now echoed with questions I couldn't ask and answers I already knew. That's when I realized the real work ahead wasn't about rebuilding a computer. It was about rebuilding myself. And it had to start with leaving. From the outside, Claire and I looked like we were raised in the same home, same parents, same walls, same kitchen table. But if love is measured by action, then we didn't grow up in the same family at all. Claire was the golden child, the daughter who sparkled at dinner parties, who danced in sequined recital dresses while guests clapped, and my parents beamed with pride. She was artistic, expressive, sensitive. I was independent, responsible, low maintenance. It sounds flattering until you realize it means she needed care. I did not. When Claire overslept, Mom made excuses for her. When I stayed up all night studying, it was expected. She borrowed money from our parents and forgot to pay it back. I paid rent without reminders. One Christmas, Claire got a designer handbag she'd been obsessing over for months. I got socks and a polite suggestion to stop working too hard. The message wasn't always loud, but it was consistent. Claire's chaos was a sign of creativity. My calm was taken for granted. I don't think they meant to send that message. I think they loved us both, just not in the same way. And that's the thing about entitled love. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through gestures, through who gets the last slice of cake, through whose dreams are allowed to cost money. In hindsight, this favoritism wasn't just a pattern. It was a structure, one I'd lived under for so long, I stopped seeing it. And once I did see it, I couldn't unsee it. That's when it became clear this wasn't just about one decision, one machine, or one betrayal. It was about a lifetime of being quietly told that I was strong enough to go without so they could give more to someone else. And as much as that hurt, it taught me something important. Just because someone is family doesn't mean their version of love is fair. What mattered now was whether I would continue to live by their priorities or finally start honoring my own. And to do that, I needed a plan, one that would begin not with confrontation, but with quiet, strategic preparation. There's a kind of theft that doesn't involve broken locks or shattered glass. It happens quietly, wrapped in the language of love. We thought it was best. It's just a computer. You'll understand when you're a parent. That's how my parents justified selling something that wasn't theirs, something I'd built piece by piece over 3 long years. The idea that what's mine could be taken without consent didn't happen overnight. It began with small things, my shampoo disappearing from the shower, my notebook scribbled in by Claire without apology, my room always open, always entered. I would say, "Please ask next time," and they'd laugh, "Don't be so uptight." At some point, I stopped expecting privacy. And when you stop expecting it, you also stop defending it. That's the slow erosion, the quiet theft of boundaries. So when they sold my computer, they didn't see it as stealing. They saw it as reallocating family resources, as if my work, my plans, my effort were part of a communal pot to dip into when someone else had a dream more photogenic than mine. I think that's what stung the most, the ease of it, the way they didn't see what they'd done as wrong, the way they called my livelihood a gaming rig, and my reaction dramatic. It wasn't just property they took, it was the proof that in their eyes what I created didn't matter enough to protect. And maybe that's the deeper wound, not that something I owned was taken, but that the people who took it didn't believe it ever truly belonged to me in the first place. But here's what I know now, and what I want to offer to anyone else who's ever felt this quiet kind of erasure. Your boundaries are valid even if no one else in your home believes them. And if the people around you refuse to honor them, Then it's time to start drawing new ones on your own terms and in a space that's truly yours. That's when I opened a blank document, gave it a name, and started something I'd never done before, planning my exit. The moment I titled the document Exit Plan, something shifted inside me. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like closing a door and hearing the click of the lock for the first time. I wasn't running away, I was designing my own rescue. I started with logistics. Where could I go realistically? My part time tech support job barely covered my student loan interest, and the freelance work I relied on was frozen after the PC was sold. But I still had something valuable: my determination and my backup drive. I combed listings for rooms and shared apartments, filtering by price and neighborhood safety. Eventually, I found a small room in a 3-bedroom flat shared by 2 grad students, Emma and Priya. The rent was tight but doable, with sacrifices cutting takeout, walking instead of Uber, and saying goodbye to casual spending. Then came the bank accounts. I opened a new one at a different bank and began transferring small amounts from my existing savings. I set up a new email for job leads and 2-factor authentication on everything. Every night after work, I packed 1 or 2 things: backup drives, personal documents, my grandmother's ring, hiding them in my backpack like I was smuggling pieces of myself to safety. It felt strange, sneaky even, but the truth was this: I wasn't stealing. I was retrieving what had always been mine. The more I planned, the more I realized this wasn't just about moving out. It was about reclaiming ownership of my time, my space, and my voice. Growing up, I was told to be the easy child, the one who didn't cause trouble. But staying silent had never earned me respect, only invisibility. I reached out to Marcus, a longtime friend who'd seen my family dynamic up close. When I told him what had happened, he didn't hesitate. "Take the guest room," he said. "Stay as long as you need. No questions, no pressure." That offer cracked something open in me: the possibility of kindness without condition. It reminded me that sometimes freedom starts with believing someone else when they say, "You deserve better." And so one Saturday morning, while my parents were at a wedding and Claire was off at orientation, I set the plan in motion: 7 boxes, 1 laptop, and a letter. The leaving was just beginning, but the healing that would take root in the space I was finally making for myself. I thought leaving would feel like liberation, that once I closed the door behind me, I'd breathe easier. And for a moment, I did. My new room was tiny, barely big enough for my bed and a desk, but it was mine. There were no footsteps outside my door, no risk of someone rifling through my things while I slept. It was quiet in a way I hadn't known I needed. But the silence after a few days started to feel like something else: grief. I wasn't grieving a person exactly. I was grieving an idea, the family I had wanted but never truly had. The kind that noticed your absences, remembered your dreams, protected your space. The kind I had defended for years, even to myself. I found myself staring at my phone late at night, not expecting a call, but still hoping. I missed Sunday pancakes. I missed the kitchen chatter. I missed my dad's terrible puns and the way my mom folded laundry while humming old songs. But I also knew those memories were fragments, carefully edited pieces of a picture that had always been cropped. This kind of grief is hard to explain. It's not like mourning someone who's gone. It's mourning someone who never quite showed up, at least not for you. I started writing things down: the good, the bad, the confusing. It helped me see the whole picture, not just the parts I missed. My therapist would later tell me this process had a name: ambiguous grief, a sadness that doesn't come with funerals or sympathy cards, but lingers anyway. One evening, I found a childhood photo tucked between books I'd brought with me. Claire and I in matching pajamas, holding up a blanket fort. We looked happy, and we were in that moment. But I also remembered what came after her tantrum, when I accidentally tore the blanket, my scolding for ruining everything. That pattern me held responsible, her forgiven, wasn't just childhood noise. It was the blueprint for the family dynamic I had finally stepped away from. And that's the lesson I was slowly learning: you can miss people, even as you heal from them. You can carry warmth and wounds in the same memory. What matters is that you don't mistake the ache for a reason to go back. Because the ache is part of the healing, and the healing was just beginning, especially once I started to rebuild more than just space. I was ready to rebuild my work, my confidence, and maybe even my purpose. All I needed now was a way back into the world I'd almost lost, and the tools to do it without permission. Starting over sounds brave in theory. In practice, it looked like me at 2 a.m., hunched over a borrowed laptop that wheezed anytime I opened more than 2 programs at once. My workstation was gone, and so was my rhythm. The freelance job I'd nearly finished before the wedding, I barely salvaged it, thanks to Taylor's husband lending me his gaming PC for 48 hours. After that, I was on my own, just me, a low-spec laptop, and a handful of clients who were suddenly wary of delays. I could feel their hesitations in every email reply. Hope everything's okay, followed by silence. Trust in this business isn't just about skill, it's about consistency. And I had just missed my first deadline. So I turned to where I'd first found confidence years ago: tech forums. I started posting anonymously, asking for hardware advice and low-cost software workarounds. What I didn't expect was the outpouring of kindness. People I'd never met offered component suggestions, workflow tips, even links to refurbished parts. One user DM'd me saying, "You're not alone. I started from less." That message stayed with me longer than I expected. There's something remarkable about digital spaces, how they can offer connection when the people closest to you won't. Through those posts and replies, I pieced together a temporary workflow. I juggled contract hours, late-night rendering, and learned to optimize beyond what I thought was possible. I also applied for small projects, ones that didn't require a fancy setup, but still let me stay in the game. That's when I remembered Jason Chen, a startup founder who once guest lectured at my college. I'd asked him thoughtful questions back then. He'd answered like he meant it. On a whim, I sent him a short email, not asking for sympathy, just for a chance. I didn't even mention the family situation, only that I was looking for contract work and currently operating on limited tech. To my surprise, he replied in less than 24 hours. He remembered me. We met for coffee the next week, me in my thrift store blazer and scuffed laptop bag, him in startup casual with a kind smile that made me feel less out of place. After I shared what I could do and what I'd lost, he said, "We've got extra equipment at the office. Come use it. Let's see what you can build." That offer wasn't charity, it was belief. And belief, as I was learning, is one of the most powerful tools you can give someone rebuilding from zero, especially when they're ready to turn that belief into something bigger than they ever imagined. The messages started the moment they saw my empty room. First came the missed calls, then the texts. My father's tone was clipped. "Come home. We need to talk." My mother's was emotional. "You broke our hearts, Natalie," Claire chimed in, too accusing me of overreacting and ruining everything. It was a storm of voices I had heard all my life, now condensed into pixels on a screen. I didn't respond at first, not because I didn't care, but because I finally did. For once, I was choosing to care about my peace more than their approval. When I finally called them, I was calm but firm. I explained that I'd moved out for my own well-being, that selling my computer wasn't just a mistake, it was a violation. My mother cried. My father called me selfish. They kept circling back to the same message: we're family. You don't just walk away. But here's what I told them and what I tell myself: still, boundaries aren't betrayal. They're an act of self-respect. For years, I thought love meant absorbing everything: the guilt, the pressure, the imbalance. But real love doesn't ask you to shrink so others can feel bigger. It doesn't require you to keep quiet so the house stays peaceful. It doesn't mean giving up what you need so someone else can have what they want. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I knew they wouldn't understand. They'd see it as rejection, not protection. But protecting myself isn't rejection, it's repair. And slowly the guilt began to fade. Not overnight and not completely, but enough to let clarity in. I wrote out my terms for contact: no unannounced visits, no financial entanglements, and most importantly, no minimizing what happened. They didn't love those rules, but I did. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't waiting for permission to live on my own terms. The space I was creating, emotional and physical, gave me more than safety. It gave me the foundation to build not just boundaries, but something bigger: belonging. And that would start where healing often does, with an unexpected voice and a door that finally opened from the other side. Claire came back 6 weeks earlier than expected. The New York program hadn't gone as planned. The glitzy orientation turned into 12-hour days filled with competitive posturing, strict mentors, and more rejection than runway walks. The job offer she thought was guaranteed. It never came. They said I wasn't polished enough. She muttered over coffee, stirring her cup like it had betrayed her too. At first, I didn't know what to say. We hadn't really talked since I left. Not deeply, not as sisters. But that day she looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Like someone who had finally seen the cost of being the center of attention. "It's exhausting," she admitted. "They're on me all the time now. Every move, every misstep. It's like I can't breathe. I didn't smile, though part of me felt vindicated. For years, I had been the responsible one, the one who carried the weight quietly while Claire floated above it all. But now, with no one left to absorb the pressure, she was finally feeling it for herself. That conversation cracked open something neither of us expected. Without the roles our parents cast us in, we were just two young women trying to make sense of the families we came from. Claire told me she used to think I had it easy, all the independence, none of the expectations. I told her I used to think she had it easy, all the attention, none of the accountability. We were both wrong and a little bit right. That's the thing about the favorite child myth, it's rarely a gift. It's a spotlight with strings, and the pedestal is lonelier than it looks. What we both inherited wasn't just affection, but expectation shaped by our parents' needs, not our own truths. That realization didn't fix everything between us, but it opened a door. We began texting occasionally. Claire even asked me to review her resume, something unthinkable a year ago. And during a particularly tense family dinner, where our parents dismissed something I said, Claire surprised me. Natalie's right, she said gently. You're not listening. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Sometimes healing starts not with apologies, but with acknowledgement. And sometimes the person you thought was your rival becomes the only one who truly understands what you've survived. As we stood in the same kitchen we once fought in, I realized maybe we weren't each other's problem. Maybe we were each other's witness. And from that, something new could begin not only between us, but within me too. A year after I walked out of my childhood home with 7 boxes and a folded letter, I stood in my own apartment, 1 bedroom, 2nd floor sunlight spilling through sheer curtains, and watched my new PC boot up for the first time. It wasn't flashy like the one I lost. No water cooling, no RGB lighting. But every part inside it had been chosen with care, purchased with my own money earned from work I loved and controlled. No one could take this one from me. Not legally, not emotionally. This machine wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of resilience, of clarity, of knowing that rebuilding isn't just about what you restore, but what you refuse to recreate. I had also built something less visible, a new system of living, one with rules I defined, boundaries that stayed in place, relationships based on respect, not obligation. I now worked as a lead designer at Jason's startup. I mentored girls in tech through a nonprofit that had once supported me. I even started journaling again, something I hadn't done since high school. Not out of duty, but because I wanted to remember how far I'd come. What surprised me most wasn't how much I'd changed, but how quiet the change was. No fireworks, no dramatic reunions, just soft, steady growth. My parents and I were on speaking terms again, careful but civil. My mother had stopped calling weekly, but when she did, her tone was gentler. My father no longer asked when I was coming to my senses, and Claire, we met once a month for lunch. We still disagreed, but now we listened. I no longer needed them to validate my choices. I had built a life where I could trust myself to do that. And maybe that's the real success, not the job title or the income or even the peaceful apartment, but the deep, unshakable belief that I get to decide who I become and that no one else's discomfort can take that from me. If I could go back and whisper something to the girl who stood in that empty bedroom a year ago, it would be this. They didn't steal your future. They simply gave you the reason to claim it. And you did. If any part of Natalie's story felt familiar, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home or silenced in the name of keeping the peace, know this, you are not alone and you are not overreacting. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. Walking away from what harms you isn't selfish. Sometimes choosing yourself is the most courageous act of love you'll ever commit, not just for you, but for the life you're meant to build. If this story moved, you helped you, or simply made you feel seen, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Tap like if you believe that healing begins with truth. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate growth, courage, and self-worth, especially when they come from unexpected places. And if there's someone in your life who needs permission to choose themselves, share this video with them. Let them know. They don't need to wait for someone else to validate their boundaries. They can start rebuilding right now. Because family isn't who claims you, it's who respects you. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.